It all started with a job offer, one you wouldn't find online but one that spread fast. The year was 401 BC. Cyrus the Younger, a Persian prince, needed soldiers. Not just any soldiers, he wanted Greeks. These were hoplites, tough, disciplined veterans of the Peloponnesian War, now out of work and hungry for pay. Cyrus promised riches for a simple job: deal with some mountain tribes in Pisidia. The pay was too good to pass up. Greeks from all over, Spartans, Athenians, Arcadians, signed on. They packed their gear, said goodbye and set off, thinking it was just another mercenary gig. They called themselves the 10,000, a formidable force united by language, culture, and a reputation for battlefield dominance. But Cyrus had a secret. He wasn't after mountain tribes, he wanted the Persian throne. His older brother, Artaxerxes II, was king. Cyrus believed he deserved the crown. The Greeks were his key to seizing power, though they didn't know it yet. Cyrus treated them well, paid on time, and promised even greater rewards. The Greeks believed in their own superiority and trusted Cyrus, at least for now. They were marching into the unknown, for a cause far bigger than they realized. What began as a job for gold would become a test of survival, loyalty, and endurance. The 10,000 were about to be swept up in a struggle for an empire. They were mercenaries, but soon, they'd be fighting for their lives. The adventure had just begun. The stakes were higher than anyone imagined. The real journey was about to start, and none of them were prepared for what was coming. The march began from Sardis, deep into Persian territory. At first it felt routine: hot sun, dusty roads, good pay. But the route was wrong. This wasn't Pisidia. They were heading east, toward the Persian heartland. Suspicion grew. The Greeks demanded answers. Cyrus finally confessed he was marching on Babylon to seize the throne from his brother. He promised a king's ransom if they helped him win. The Greeks were trapped, too far in to turn back, too uncertain to quit. After heated debate, they chose to follow Cyrus. The promise of wealth and adventure was too strong. They crossed the Euphrates, entering the empire's core, a point of no return. The mood was tense but resolute. They were now part of a royal coup. Every city they passed reminded them of the scale of their gamble. But they were professionals, confident in their phalanx and discipline. The Greeks prepared for the battle that would decide their fate. They weren't just mercenaries anymore, they were kingmakers. The stakes had never been higher. The open field would soon reveal if their confidence was justified. The fate of an empire and their own lives hung in the balance. The march was no longer about pay, it was about survival. The 10,000 pressed on, ready for whatever came next. The decisive battle was near. Everything depended on what happened next. The real test was about to begin. The showdown came at Cunaxa, near Babylon. Artaxerxes' army was massive, a sea of men, cavalry, and chariots. The Greeks, holding the right flank, didn't flinch. This was their moment. The battle began. The Greek phalanx advanced, shields locked, spears forward, a wall of bronze and iron. The Persians facing them broke and fled before contact. The Greeks won their side with barely a scratch. But disaster struck elsewhere. Cyrus, seeing his brother, charged with a handful of cavalry. He wounded Artaxerxes but was killed in the chaos. The Greeks, returning from their pursuit, thought they'd won, until the news spread. Cyrus was dead. Their victory meant nothing. The man who hired them was gone. Suddenly they were stranded, deep in enemy territory, with no employer and no purpose. The cause was lost. The job was over. The Greeks faced a new reality: survival in a hostile empire. Their triumph turned to dread. The 10,000 were alone, surrounded, and hunted. The real battle was just beginning. They had to fight not for gold but for their lives. The march home would be their greatest challenge. The Greeks had won the battle but lost everything else. Now, they had to find a way out. The struggle for survival had begun. The odds were against them. With Cyrus dead, the Greeks were trapped and vulnerable. Artaxerxes demanded their surrender. The Greeks, led by Clearchus, refused. "If the king wants our arms, let him come and take them." A tense standoff followed. The Persians, wary of another fight, offered a truce. Tissaphernes, a Persian satrap, promised safe passage and supplies. Desperate, the Greeks agreed. Clearchus and the senior generals went to negotiate. It was a trap. The generals were seized and executed. The Greeks were leaderless, betrayed, and surrounded. Panic and despair swept the camp. It seemed hopeless. But the Persians underestimated the Greeks' resilience. In the darkness, new leaders would have to rise. The army faced its lowest point. The 10,000 were alone, but not broken. They would have to find strength from within. The Persians thought they'd won by killing the leaders. They were wrong. The Greeks would not give up. A new chapter was about to begin. Ordinary men would do extraordinary things. The fight for survival was far from over. In the chaos, one man stepped up. Xenophon, an Athenian and student of Socrates. He wasn't a general, just an observer, but he refused to let the army die. Xenophon rallied the remaining officers, calling a meeting in the dead of night. He reminded them, "We are Greeks, we are free men, we must save ourselves." He urged them to elect new leaders and march north toward the Black Sea. His words inspired hope and action. The army held an assembly and chose new generals, Xenophon among them. The next morning, they burned excess baggage, formed a defensive square, and began the march home. The Persians harassed them, but the Greeks were transformed. No longer mercenaries but brothers fighting for survival. Xenophon's leadership gave them purpose and discipline. The 10,000 moved as one, determined to escape. Every step was a battle, but they pressed on. The Greeks had found new strength in adversity. They would not be broken. The journey home had truly begun. The odds were long, but hope was alive. The 10,000 marched north, united and resolute. The march north was brutal. The Persians shadowed them, attacking with cavalry and archers. Xenophon adapted, organizing slingers and archers to fight back. Soon the Greeks left the plains for the mountains of Kurdistan, where new dangers awaited. Hostile tribes attacked from the cliffs. The Greeks fought for every step. Winter hit hard. Snow, frostbite, starvation. Men died by the dozens. Discipline and leadership kept them moving. They built shelters, foraged for food and cared for the wounded. The will to live drove them on. Every mile was a victory. They had survived armies and betrayal. Now they battled the elements. The hope of home kept them going. After months of hardship, the Greeks reached the land of the Colchians. Exhausted and starving, they fought one last battle for a mountain pass. Then a shout from the vanguard. "Thalata! Thalata! The sea! The sea!" From the mountaintop, they saw the Black Sea, a shimmering promise of home. Relief and joy swept the army. Hardened soldiers wept, hugged and laughed. The sea meant safety, hope, and a way back to Greece. They built a monument of stones marking their triumph. The cry of "Thalata! Thalata!" became a symbol of hope after struggle. The impossible journey was nearly over. The 10,000 had survived against all odds. The sight of the sea was their salvation. They had walked out of the heart of an empire. Home was finally within reach. The Greeks reached Trapezus on the Black Sea, safe, but not yet home. The local Greeks welcomed them, but feeding 10,000 men was a challenge. They celebrated, but soon faced a new problem: not enough ships for everyone. Some sailed, most marched along the coast, led by Xenophon. Now, politics and hunger replaced Persian enemies. Discipline frayed. Some soldiers plundered towns, others mutinied. Xenophon struggled to hold the army together. After more marching and hardship, they reached Byzantium. Hired by Sparta, the survivors finally returned to the Greek world. Their epic march was over. They had done the impossible. Why does the story of the 10,000 endure? It's more than military history. It's a tale of resilience, leadership, and survival. A small army marched through the Persian Empire, won every battle, and escaped. Their journey exposed Persia's weakness and inspired future conquerors like Alexander the Great. Xenophon's account, the Anabasis, became a classic on leadership and endurance. The 10,000 remind us that even in the darkest moments, courage and discipline can prevail. They chose to fight, to walk, to survive, one step at a time. Their story is a testament to the human spirit. Against all odds, they found their way home, and that lesson never gets old.